It comes and goes. We're out here chasing a feeling.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feels Out Loud, brought to you by Becoming Together Therapy and Wellness. This is your host, Sarah Martini, along with the fabulous Becky McNattin. We are glad to have you listening as we live and share stories of mental health.
Good morning, everyone. I had a discussion with a friend recently that has been on my mind, Tara.
Okay.
It was all about imposter syndrome.
Oh, boy.
And what the friend and I thought about the topic. And we were both sharing about times that has happened for us and what we did to navigate it. So I really wanted you and I to dive into this today because it's a concept in the mental health world that gets referred to frequently.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to clarify, imposter syndrome is not an official mental health diagnosis. But it absolutely impacts depression and anxiety. So while we don't diagnose someone specifically with imposter syndrome, it is a lived experience that the mental health community has been increasingly focused on in recent decades because of the mental health impact. Mm-hmm. And as a therapist, I'm sure you have this as well. I process through the lived influence of imposter syndrome in so many different arenas of life. It's not just professional.
It is not.
Every role involves imposter syndrome, and it changes how we feel about ourselves, which impacts our self-esteem and sense of worth. And so I went to see how common imposter syndrome is. And when I looked it up, several sources say it could be as high as 80%.
That's crazy.
Guess what I thought? I found myself wondering, is there actually 20% that has not experienced imposter syndrome? I feel like everybody does.
That's valid.
Where's the 20%?
That's amazing.
So every time I've started a new thing, I definitely have this experience. Mm-hmm. Tara, what's the time that you've experienced imposter syndrome?
Oh my goodness, I'm experiencing it right now. In that,
oh, I love that so much.
I've said this before. I taught for over 20 years.
Uh-huh.
And I knew it real well, and I was good at it. And I was the expert. Mm-hmm. And people would come to me about ability and skill and things like that. And then I decided to leave it all behind and then start over and become a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
So being new to the therapist world, I'm still struggling with, and I talk to coworkers who are new therapists, mm-hmm. and we live that every day in that at our age, many of us, it's our second career. And it's like, whoa, we were experts in one area, and now we're here learning, and we're living this imposter syndrome going, are we supposed to be here?
Yeah. Well,
everybody else looks like they know exactly what they're doing.
You and I last week spent so much time talking about a facet of unknown, which was in travel anxiety. But from this facet of unknown in beginning something new,
yes,
we can experience imposter syndrome. Yep. And I remember one time being in a room of leaders, all people who I had looked up to so much. Mm-hmm. And wondered, how did I get into this room with all these people who are smarter than me?
Yeah.
I remember it was so strange because I felt like I absolutely did not have the skills to offer anything of substance mm-hmm. to that group. And what I've learned about myself is that when imposter syndrome is high for me, I tend to do some very interesting things to calm my intense self-doubt.
What do you do?
I frequently go to trying to do all of the things. And I think every coping tool we come up with sometimes without even knowing it. What have you done to cope with imposter syndrome?
One of the things that has helped me is realizing to pause. And I literally will say it to myself, like, pause. Okay, just pause. Mm-hmm. I did all the things they did to get here. I had to pass. So you look at it black and white, right? You take the emotion out of it. I took the same exam. I've put in the same amount of hours. So I had to have the skills to get here. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here.
Totally.
So the black and white, let's take out the emotion, helps me.
Well, I think that in terms of this topic, great coping strategy. Look at the data that you know.
Yep.
Right now, we're going to take a short commercial break, but stay tuned as we dig deeper into the experience of imposter syndrome. Find out the ways that imposter syndrome shows up in your life and what you can do to respond. Thank you for listening. We will be back in just a moment.
You don't never need help from no-
Welcome back to Feels Out Loud, brought to you by Becoming Together Therapy and Wellness. I'm Tara Martini with Becky McNattin. Let's dive right back into our discussion on imposter syndrome.
Love it. Well,
Yes.
imposter syndrome was first identified in the late 70s. So this has been a concept we've been talking about in the mental health world for decades now. And it was actually coined imposter phenomenon. Two researchers who were studying the experience of women, and also the researchers were women. So shout out to powerful women.
Love that.
Yes. So they were studying experiences of women who had earned a PhD in their professional fields. And they noticed in their research that despite having achieved success in their lives, many of these women noted things like not being smart enough for the positions that they had and thought they were fooling other people with their capacities. It was like they believed they were fakes. And this is such a true experience. So these researchers we've got to be onto something. And then from there, the research around imposter phenomenon at the time came into play. We as humans feel like we're going to be found out by other people, or at least 80% of us do.
The other 20, I don't know.
Yeah, well, that people around us will realize at some point we didn't actually have the skills or talents they thought we did, or that we are trying to belong when we don't actually even fit in.
Right.
And so much of imposter syndrome is rooted in our belief about self. It really is in our belief about self. It definitely is linked to how we're socialized and differs across genders and decades. And in initial research around imposter phenomenon, there was a lot of genderizing in the thought around women in leadership positions or women in particular degrees having a thought of I don't have the skills for this based on thoughts were in that initial research around socialization and gender. But the reality is that imposter syndrome, definitely not a new concept, and seems to transcend time, age, gender, and even life area. What would you say to this? Why do you think this is, Tara?
Well, I think so much of it goes back to, like you said, that idea of the socialization, in that when you take, and the great example is men and women, of when you take a gender who is considered less than and lacked so many rights that the other one had, that any achievement, then there's going to be imposter syndrome of, wait a second, I possess this power to vote. Wait a second, I've possessed this power. I can also be a manager or a boss lady, because society has told them, no, you couldn't for so long. So it is that idea of, well, if you're inundated with the notion of you can't do that, you're not capable, but now you are in that position, that self-doubt is just sitting there waiting for you once you get to that level.
Right. Well, and in terms of contributing factors to what we now call imposter syndrome, you were highlighting second career. It feels like things that when they're new to us, that I'm embarking on something that is somewhat unknown. I've known something that it has this essence of, I don't know, mastery. You said the word expert. What do you think is modeled for us around success, mastery, perfection?
I think it is the idea of, so much of that is we're inundated with the idea that mastery and perfection of something is extremely rare and not achievable. So it is, we're always going to work toward perfection, but nothing's perfect. We're going to work toward mastery. So, for example, I'm not insulting school districts here, but I'm pointing out a fact that dawned on me. When teachers are evaluated, and I was on the reevaluation committee for the last district I was in, so we analyzed how are teachers evaluated. Mastery is one of them. And the norm is always never give someone all of that level in each category.
Okay.
Because then they have nothing to work for. and then they'll have no motivation to be better. Wait, what? Okay, but if it's a level in which we're saying it's achievable and we have it on there as a goal, but we know we're never going to allow people to get there.
Yeah.
Why are we putting it on there? And it created this sense of, it became this unicorn of no one was ever going to achieve mastery. And I think in our society, that's one of the things that contributes to it, is that it's unachievable. It's so rare. So why am I worthy enough of being that person who's going to achieve that?
Well, it makes so much sense to me as you say it's pedestalized or as this ideal.
Yeah.
And likely isn't even real or realistic at least.
Yep.
And you have me thinking about something really interesting, that it seems like modeling has this connection between a person's worth is tied to what they know. That who we are as individuals, our innate worth, and I'm not talking about worth that we can contribute from knowledge, but that we feel like how valuable we are is tied to what we know.
Right.
Which would seem to perpetuate perfectionism. We know that that's rampant. This ideal of, if there's even a sliver of what it isn't, then it's not yet done, needs to be more. And then that would say something about us.
Right.
As people.
And we're not capable. We're not competent. I just said to my supervisor the other day, I said, it's been this long since I've been a therapist. And I said, I left environment which I was the supervisor. I was the one that people came to if they were struggling. And I always had the answer. I was the expert.
Yeah.
And I said, there are times here where I'm thinking, and why did I decide to start over on the totem pole here of like, I'm the new one, right? I'm the baby.
Yeah.
And I have so many more questions than answers. And I'm not the one who people are coming to. I'm the one seeking out.
Yeah.
Right? Well, one, it takes vulnerability. But two, it's that idea of how cool is that you've put yourself in that situation. But that's a scary place to be, because imposter syndrome is living within you then every day going, well, should I be here? Do I have a right to be here? Because I'm looking around at these other therapists and I am like, I will never use words like that. I don't even know what she just said.
Right. Well,
right?
And that is imposter syndrome.
Right.
There is a whole institute around this,
which again,
it is called. Yes, so we've got to talk about this several different times. There are whole things about the topics. The Imposter Syndrome Institute.
I don't believe it. There really is.
And look it up. Was co-founded by Valerie Young and Carolyn Herforth. Talk about two additional powerhouse women.
Which love
women researchers around women who are doing all the things. So they started the Imposter Syndrome Institute, and their mission is to stamp out imposter syndrome. I don't know if they'll ever succeed, but that's their mission. They have a website where they share lots of information about a training program they developed, as well as their passion and research around imposter syndrome. You can look at their website at impostersyndrome.com. I encourage everybody to go look at this. On their website, I found a quote that absolutely resonated with me.
Okay.
The quote was, the only way to stop feeling like an imposter is to stop thinking like an imposter. And I thought that these words highlighted, I'll say it again, the only way to stop feeling like an imposter is to stop thinking like an imposter. And I thought that they got at that experience of our secret worry about what others will think about us and our capacities, that life is so much more than what actually happens. And we talk about this in the mental health world often. It's so much more than what actually happens. It's what we tell ourselves about it. It is the messaging that we send about the things that happen. And sometimes that has more power than the thing itself. So this quote gets at how our own thinking contributes to our beliefs about ourselves. What do you think about this quote, Tara?
I mean, amen. I think it is. How many times do we talk about it's the narrative we've written about the situation? Doesn't mean it's the reality of it.
Yeah.
The idea of we create this story. Part of imposter syndrome is that belief of, and other people believe it too. Right?
Yes.
Of they believe Tara shouldn't be here or whatever it is. And it's telling yourself and changing that narrative to but I do deserve to be here. But what's battling me inside is I'm telling myself a different story.
Right. Well, and you bring up a really great point that we're telling a story without asking anybody else about what we're saying. So you may be writing something about what I'm thinking. Everybody else thinks that too, without asking everybody else if they actually think that thing. And that's part of the power of imposter syndrome is the secrecy in not sharing what's going on in our minds.
Well, and the assumptions we make, right? We assume if I feel this way, that I'm an imposter, other people feel I am.
Yes.
And I am not worthy to be here.
Yes. And in the Imposter Syndrome Institute on their website, they highlight 5 different types of imposter syndrome. So if you are sitting there listening today and you're thinking, okay, well, yeah, I have experienced imposter syndrome. There are different iterations of this.
Tell us more.
I think it's super helpful to understand how might imposter syndrome manifest itself for us specifically as people.
Okay.
And so first type of imposter syndrome is the perfectionist. Now, if someone feels imposter syndrome from this perfection space, they are going to focus on how things are done, the process, and the outcomes. But almost everything is seen as needing improvement. Almost everything is seen as needing improvement. One minor issue can equal the experience of failure. And success can mean the base expectation rises. We can talk about this as like the bar gets reset somewhere else. Unless you were absolutely perfect, you could have done better. And likely we're not very clear with ourselves even when we're experiencing imposter syndrome on what actually is perfect. We haven't totally identified that. So we look for the sliver of what it isn't to constantly say it wasn't perfect, to then say, and I'm an imposter. We see this everywhere. Have you noticed this anywhere recently?
Oh my gosh, yes. And I'll just give one more example of my work imposter syndrome is I've noticed in that one of the things I've been getting good at are things like notes, right? We have to give notes on our sessions. And I just was on a roll, like, all right, I've got this. This is one of my stronger things. And then I made like one mistake. A tiny mistake that I caught, and then supervisor caught it and was like, hey, and I went, oh yeah, I said, I was going to bring that up. Like, that's awesome. Whatever. Maybe took 45 seconds of my life and time, but it immediately brought me right back to, well, I'm a failure at notes, and it was like,
that's a great example. Yes.
I am learning and I was feeling like I was gaining the skill. I am still doing a good job.
Yeah.
One mistake does not equate to starting all over and losing your progress.
Yeah, and that perfectionism gets at some of the absolutes of like, I'm always a failure, or this will always be this way.
Right.
Second imposter syndrome type is the expert. We've talked about expert a couple times already on the show so far today. So this would be a person that knowledge version of perfectionism. The primary focus is on what and how much you know and can do. So you expect yourself to know everything and anything that might show that you are like aware and capable of the thing. And if you don't, well, that's failure to meet competence. So if you don't know all the knowing, you have failed to meet competence. And until you know there is all there is to know about a topic, you haven't mastered it and cannot be an expert in it. I have in a different role of life than professional, because we have imposter syndrome all the time in all different places. When I found out I was pregnant for the first time, I'm not kidding you, I drove to a bookstore, a local bookstore, no joke, bought every magazine and book there was on the topic. Every single one.
You want to be prepared.
Talk about wanting to be the expert. I was going to learn every piece of data out there on parenting and pregnancy. And I thought that would be, as long if I knew, then I would be the expert. I see how we insulate ourselves in that knowledge, and how also it's the knowledge version of perfectionism, because there's always an awareness of we don't know all the knowing. We don't know all the knowing.
And how overwhelming to acknowledge we don't know.
Entirely. And then we have the natural genius.
Oh boy. Yeah.
So this would be a person who focuses on thinking that competence. So imposter syndrome would get you thinking. Competence is geared around ease and speed in this in this kind of thinking.
Wow. Okay.
So certainly folks in this category care about outcomes too.
Yep.
But they much more care about the way in which one got there.
Hmm.
If it is a struggle or took a long time, it wasn't enough. It needs to be speedy.
Okay.
So if you have a difficult time mastering something, or it isn't on the first try, a big success, that would evoke imposter syndrome feeling.
Well, this would make sense for all of you out there who are getting your permit or driver's license. That idea of if you don't pass it the first time.
Yep.
Well, then I'm an imposter. No, that doesn't mean it. It doesn't have to be that you get it the first time and it's just the perfect amount of hours.
Yes. My young kiddo, he's 11 years old right now. He had a few years ago, he really wanted to have this build a robot. It was a kit on building the robot.
Yep.
And he had full on meltdown about 10 minutes in, because if he couldn't figure out the instructions on how to do this, really without even reading the instruction, but just know how to do it.
Absolutely.
He just said, well, I'm never going to build this.
Yeah.
And so also to your point of, if we don't get it on that first try, or even it's a struggle on the first try, that initial and immediate mastery, we say, I wasn't cut out for this.
Right. I'm not worthy of it.
Yep. Then we have the soloist. And imposter syndrome can show up as the soloist. This is a person who cares mostly about who is completing the tasks. It needs to be just you. That's why it's called the soloist. You are imposter, and you experience imposter syndrome if you need help from anybody else. They tell themselves that they should be able to do it on their own without help or support from other people. Any outside assistance or guidance would cause shame. They would say, then I am not enough. And if you don't get there on your own, you need to question your abilities.
Right.
So this is a lonely existence, to be
very lonely,
the soloist in imposter syndrome. Do you know anybody like this, Tara?
Yeah, you're looking at her.
Okay. Okay. Staring at her.
So here's the fascinating thing is, one of us typically prepares an episode, and then the other person will look at it and kind of prepare and to kind of be the other person. And I didn't get to the soloist, and I was like chuckling about the perfectionist, yada, yada. And then as you're talking right now, I was like, oh my God, that's me.
Total personal call out.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I find this in that in the last 6 months, the last year, I moved on my own with my daughter. And I could not be more of a soloist. I don't want any help on anything that involves the house, the yard, the maintenance, whatever. People will come and be like, if you need help with mowing, no. I'm rejecting all support, any assistance. Well, the other day I was completing a task and I decided, logically, made a great decision of pulling up a tree. And I was missing one of the things I needed to do it. And I was kicking myself. I'm like, why do I not have that type of shovel? Who would not have that type of shovel?
Right.
Great. Here I am thinking I could do all this on my own, and I can't.
Yep.
Okay. It's that idea of it is very lonely, because just because I need support or help or ask someone a question about a right tool or whatever, doesn't mean I'm incapable of doing it.
Yes. Right.
I can still be capable.
Right.
And be independent, but seek guidance at times.
And this idea that it becomes interconnected in a fairly unhealthy way, independence, and idealizing that.
Yep.
That independence is at all costs.
For sure. And I want to show everyone, even though no one has ever made me feel this way, that I can maintain the yard and the pool and the whatever. But no one's pressuring me more than the greatest pressure is myself.
Yep. And then the last imposter syndrome type is the superhuman. This is a person who measures competence based on how many roles they can both juggle and excel in. So how many roles? They're looking for all the things here to juggle and excel in. So they need to do it all. They tell themselves that if they are truly competent people, they should be able to handle any role in their lives: parent, coworker, spouse, friend, you name it, neighbor. You might be telling yourself, if you experience this kind of imposter syndrome, that you need to be the hardest worker, have the highest standards. And if you don't, you are a fraud.
Can you be more than one of these?
Oh, well, people can be more than one.
Good.
Yes, people can absolutely have like different iterations of this. There might be certain roles that highlight a certain kind of response for us too.
Yep.
I can tell all listeners, this was also a personal call out for me as I'm even saying these words right now, that, Terry, you feel like maybe you're the soloist. Yep. I am an imposter syndrome as a superhuman through and through and through. So I laughed at myself as I'm even saying this.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting chuckling on, I totally do this. I tell myself that if I can't handle it all, I am not yet competent.
Wow.
If I can't do it.
It's a lot of pressure to put on yourself.
Yes, soloist. It's a lot of pressure. So what do we do? Well, okay, for all of us who might have seen themselves in those various spots of imposter syndrome, the ways that it can show up. Well, what we do, we downplay what we know. That is what we are doing. We're downplaying what we know. We're holding ourselves to completely unrealistic standards of success. Yeah. Maybe we even tell ourselves that we define competence in something that is total success. Or we keep shifting the goalpost and we say, well, this was great, but it wasn't this. And now we've moved it a little. We worry about the expectations of others and fear that the bar will keep getting set higher and higher without us being able to identify that. We avoid putting ourselves out there and taking risks. It's super scary being something new, as you have talked about lots on the show so far today. We may avoid doing that because imposter syndrome is so loud or so fierce.
Right.
We might stay in places, possibly professionally, too long, way beyond when it's healthy for us, because we are afraid of new responsibility or new roles.
And it is scary. And the key to remember is you can be terrified and you can feel like an imposter, but it shouldn't stop you from doing the thing.
And we might take ourselves out of the running on opportunities. If there's a new position available, or if there's even a new hobby, we tell ourselves something about it. Also, people who experience imposter syndrome are much more likely to feel burnout. We could pretty easily connect those two on you're not expansively thinking about yourself, and you're certainly not giving yourself credit for what you do know how to do.
Right.
When I think about imposter syndrome, secrecy and shame are core to this paradigm and this framework. Secrecy and shame perpetuate self-doubt. You mentioned self-doubt several minutes ago, because we hide our thoughts and emotions, and which doing that gives them more power.
Right.
Gives them more power. We're not checking our storytelling about things with the other people. Shame is the sense that we are bad or flawed or inherently not enough. So we would be motivated to hide this from other people. Right. I mean, if we're feeling shame,
for sure,
we would be highly energized around keeping that a secret, because we don't want people to know that we are not enough, if that's what shame is telling us.
Well, we don't want people to know that. And I think one thing people do, and why the importance of it is, that's why so many people, whether you are a new therapist, teacher, whatever, accountant, whatever you are, so many people, you're set up to have a mentor or a supervisor or whatever it is, because that's someone then that really helps you promote asking and having that voice rather than keeping it a secret, right? If you can share and voice your self-doubt or the questions you have by connecting you with someone who is more of an expert, then you're less likely to have imposter syndrome. Where then if you're on an island and you have no one to talk to about it, all those intrusive thoughts are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right. And verbalizing them is huge. If we can verbalize them in a space that feels safe, because shame and secrecy move right together. As I just said, when we feel shame, we have a thought and a huge motivation to not say that out loud, because we worry that it's true. But we're not checking our thinking. So we're left with, as you just said, our own thoughts and beliefs in that existence of secrecy, which then leads to further intensity of shame.
Right.
So it becomes kind of a cycle that our sense of fundamental inadequacy is so linked to that shame. When we don't believe we are capable, we live it.
Right.
And I see this secrecy cycle happening, that in feeling imposter syndrome, even just being able to like kind of laugh and call ourselves out on, oh my goodness, I feel that. Yep. Oh my goodness, I do that.
Yep.
Allows us to disempower the negative thoughts.
Exactly.
So, that kind of leads to, well, what can we do about imposter syndrome? Because lots of us out there are going to experience this, and we are doing new things a lot.
Right.
So if we think that imposter syndrome frequently occurs or coincides with doing something new, we're going to have the self-doubt.
Mm-hmm. And
we're going to have the self-doubt that comes up.
Mm-hmm. And it's that notion of, we don't want people. One, imposter syndrome, naturally, yes, the hope is it goes away with time, right? The longer you're in a position, the more competent you feel. But it's the idea of, we don't want people to just think, well, that's what's going to heal this or mend it. There are things you can do.
Yep. So sharing ourselves. And I make this sound really simple by saying share yourselves, but this is really complicated and very hard to do.
Well, you're vulnerable.
Yeah. Talk about the self-doubt and process this with people. Practicing vulnerability is a massive step in recognizing the messages that we send to ourselves. If you just even say out loud what you're saying in your head, you will realize what you are saying to yourself. Because we're now making them more real by saying them out loud. And I think about when I first started a business, huge imposter syndrome on being faced with all sorts of new things that I'd never known about. And it took me a lot of vulnerability to just tell people how much I thought I couldn't do it. And people who would listen to me and not necessarily just placate and say, oh, it'll be fine.
Right.
That would just hear, that's a big thought. It's a big thought. I would say we also need to stop rationalizing negative self-statements with humility. People, we do this all the time. We say negative self-statements keep me humble. It means being mean to you is not a sustainable strategy for incenting motivation to pursue our passions. I'm going to say that again. Being mean to you is not a sustainable strategy for incenting motivation to pursue passions. We might be sending ourselves messages around imposter syndrome and then kind of rationalizing the capacity to do that or continuing to do it in that, well, that just, that keeps me a humble person. No, it's a mean person to you. We just feel bad.
Oh, yes.
I don't know that I feel great about doing anything when I've told myself how much I'm bad at it.
Right. No, you beat yourself up.
So absorb the positive feedback. That makes me think about absorb the positive feedback truly. I want everybody who's listening to hear my words right now. Think about the last time that someone said something positive to you and how quickly you discarded it, you minimized it, or you reduced that affirmation. How fast did you do that? I bet it's already happened today, and your day hasn't even been that long. Think about that and what it would be like to hear what people say and believe them. Hear what gets said to you. If you believe their critical or constructive feedback, my guess is you might. Believe the positive statements too. So consider your relationship with positive statements about you and how this influences your self-esteem. Think about that relationship you have with absorbing positive feedback. Practice. I want you to try this. Practice saying thank you to people who tell you something kind or supportive, and then end the sentence there. Don't say something else about minimizing the statement. Don't say, thank you, but I just picked it up from a book right before I walked in here. Or, well, that's so nice, but actually, I don't know what I'm talking about at all. End your sentence after thank you.
We do that all the time.
And that contributes to imposter syndrome in huge ways.
Thank you, period.
Thank you. Yes.
That's it.
And in addition to that, in absorbing the positive feedback from people, writing down successes and praising yourself for this. I know it sounds corny, but this is not arrogance. And in our society, I think we get these things oddly intermingled, that praising ourselves, being proud of what we do, even if it's something new we learn or something new we're trying, we think of as kind of an arrogance, and they're not the same. I don't know if we're very good at praising ourselves. I'm not
we're
super sure.
Awful, I feel like.
If we can't accept the praise from others, I don't know how well we do this by ourselves and how much that perpetuates imposter syndrome. So this would be seeking to notice more expansively what you do. I would guess listeners do a short little check-in, even as I'm speaking right now. Do you notice the things you don't do well? And do you notice the things that could use improvement? What in those parts of imposter syndrome did you see yourselves on? If you're doing those, looking expansively at what you do would also mean that you need to notice the successes. Give yourself credit for the things you're doing in all of those areas of life. And then when you're doing that, positive self-talk about it. Think about the ways that you talk to yourself and the things that you say. You kind of mentioned this just a minute ago, Tara. How often do you use words associated with failure or not good enough to describe what you do? When outcomes may not turn out as intended, what do you say to yourself about this?
Well, and then we wonder why we have low self-esteem.
Yes.
And we wonder why we have imposter syndrome.
Yes.
It's because the voices inside.
It's do these unintended outcomes get labeled as failure?
Right.
If that sliver of the thing didn't work out how you thought it would, is that because you're bad? Or because you don't know enough yet? And what is there a way to respond with compassion to you? Could that be? That would be the positive self-talk part. Expanding your comfort zone. We did a whole show on expanding comfort zone around traveling. But recognizing fear and know that imposter syndrome is so much about fear.
So much.
Gosh, we're so scared. But rather than discarding fear is actually a really beautiful emotion. Rather than discarding it, we also don't have to let it rule our world.
Right.
And I think we get ourselves thinking that it's one or the other. We don't need to do that. Respond to it with questions. Respond to it with questions. You and I talk about curiosity, about exploring all the time.
All the time.
Try something new and then praise yourself for doing it. And
for taking that risk.
And ask fear a couple of questions.
Yep.
Ask fear a few questions. Set realistic standards. So much of imposter syndrome is setting up these thoughts about what ought to be or what would be if you knew the knowing. And think about your relationship with concepts like failure or even the word mistake. And as I'm saying this, listeners, I'm looking at Tara and Tara's like, I do have a relationship with the word mistake.
I'm quite familiar. We're buddies, actually.
How do these words make you feel?
Right.
If I even just said them and you're listening, did you have a feel about it? Well, then you need to explore that. What would it be like to move toward a place of willingness to make mistakes? Right. That's part of embracing imposter syndrome. And a learner attitude, not necessarily a knower attitude, because learners are going to make mistakes.
Well, and it's the idea of how many of us are amazing at talking to our clients, our own children, our friends, our peers about all of these things and talking about how mistakes are a good thing. It shows you're learning. It shows you're growing. And then here we are living the imposter syndrome every day, taking our mistakes and, like you said, they're just a massive catastrophe now. Where one of the things, a strategy for this that I have found that really helps is it goes back to the write down successes and praise. I started doing this when I was teaching because you get frustrated of like all these parents and whatever it is. So I created a folder called Happygrams. And then anytime I received a kind email or some kind of award or whatever, I would plop it in there.
Love that.
And I'd have my students do the same thing. And it was always if you're discouraged, if you're feeling down, go to that.
Love it.
And remind yourself how capable you are and that you have the skills. And that's a great thing to do while you're experiencing imposter syndrome.
I totally love that because the idea of we have choices on how we write emotions. And that's a fantastic coping tool to help balance or respond with compassion to moments of doubt or hardship. We don't need to write doubt as a bad feel.
Right.
And we don't need to evaluate it that way. Doubt is fear, and that's okay. What we tell ourselves about emotions is what can start to impact our mental health. We have big opportunity in times of imposter syndrome to come up with ways like you just said that are compassionate and kind about our emotional experience and say, here's what is. You're scared.
Yep.
So much to think about here. This has
so
been
much.
a fantastic discussion. And we're going to take a short commercial break. But when we come back, we will talk through listener questions, all of your questions about imposter syndrome and how to navigate through the moments where you're feeling it.
Yes.
Feels Out Loud will process your thoughts and questions in just a moment.
Everybody needs help. You gotta find your people, then you'll find yourself. Nothing to lose. In a world full of strangers, you don't know the trust. All you see is danger, trying to find what you lost.
We are back again with Feels Out Loud. And this part of the show is where we talk through questions from you, our beautiful listeners. If you have a question related to mental wellness, sharing feelings, or our topics for each week that you would like us to process through, please visit our website at becomingtogethermn.com and find the Feels Out Loud page to submit a question directly. Or certainly email us at contact@becomingtogethermn.com. We truly do want to hear from you and what you are wondering about.
And we had a lot of people who had some thoughts about imposter syndrome, and I feel like you and I could have come up with all the questions, Tara, because we live it.
100%, along with 80% of people.
Yes, but we had a listener who said, I hate my job, but I'm so scared to start a new one. I feel like I need to know what the job fully is before I start, so I can decide if I'm capable. I think this might be imposter syndrome. And I want to say to this listener, I love that you're thinking about this.
Yes.
And it sounds like you might feel like your thought process is limiting you. That's what I'm hearing that you're worrying about. And I hear you saying that you hate your job. So there are spaces to think about right now. What are you hating? What do you hate? And before I get into like maybe what you could do, listener, I noticed that you said the hate your job, which was an emotion, and you talk about needing to know all there is to know about the new job, which is actually a thought. So what if you put these on the same page with one another? What is the emotion about the new job? Is it anxiety? Is it worry about your skills? Is it fear about the unknown? Is it apprehension about change? Once we have emotions and emotions, we can really think about the reflection on imposter syndrome. What are emotions saying to each other? So think about how you balance the feeling of imposter syndrome, because it sounds like this might be here right now. You're thinking through, you need to know the job fully before you start. How do you balance that sense of imposter syndrome with growing and learning, but not overwhelming yourself? What thoughts do you have, Tara?
And I think it is so important for this person of, one, it's like going back to what we said of setting that level of expectation. There's no way you're going to know every facet of this new job.
Yeah.
Part of it is learning. The other piece to it, I go back to when you say you hate your job. When we become not miserable, but unhappy in a job, sometimes we can make statements like that. But if you dig closer, okay, what about it did you dislike? And what things did you like? Because then the things you liked, you want to carry to your new job.
Yes.
The things you disliked, those might be things to focus on for your new job.
Fantastic input there, because it does allow you to then hone in on what more specifically are you talking about rather than the totality, which imposter syndrome writes absolutes.
Right.
Imposter syndrome wants us to focus on the blurriness of all of it together.
Yep.
Another listener said, what might I notice outside of my professional life that would highlight imposter syndrome? And I love this because it's getting at these other areas of life. We can experience imposter syndrome anytime. So something that you might notice, are you signing up for all the things? Are you trying to read all the books about a new hobby before you do it? Are you needing to think through and know all the details before you do something? Is there something you've wanted to do, but haven't because something gets in your way?
Right.
You're thinking about it. You're telling yourself something. Do you talk yourself out of things that are interesting or intriguing? So I'd ask this listener in any area of life, and all of us who may also see ourselves here too, notice your internal dialogue and just start to pay attention to what the messages are that you're sending yourself about the roles you have in your life.
Yes.
And when you notice what you're saying, are they overly critical? What are the messages? So notice them and just then start to say, well, what are they?
Right. What are they? And then also go for the reframe. Right.
Love that.
If it's you're learning to paint, I don't know how to do that combination of that stroke or whatever it is. Rather than that, reframe it of, I can't wait, I get to learn this new skill.
Reframe. Yes.
The reframe, baby.
We are at the end of our show already for today. Thank you for listening, everyone, this morning. And join us next week as we talk through relationships and conflict. And in the week ahead, be kind to yourself. Remember that connection fosters wellness. And your voice is one the world around you needs to hear, everyone. Share yourselves, friends.
Try again. Some do, some don't. Some will, some won't. I wanna feel just a little.